Hello, everyone. I am Carolyn Hymas, the Associate Director of Alumnix and Family Engagement. Thank you so much for joining us today for our talk, Grant Writing 101, with our speaker, Anjanette Ramey. She's a CalArts alumna, as well as the founder and artistic director of Maraya Performing Arts. For everyone who's joining us, if you have any questions throughout Anjanette's talk, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen to submit your questions. She'll be taking questions towards the end of the presentation. Without further ado, I'll pass it over to you, Anjanette, to get started.
Awesome. Thank you, Carolyn. Hi, everyone. I won't see your faces, but I see your names on the screen. So welcome to Grant Writing 101. I'm Anjanette Ramey. I am a CalArts alumnix. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. We'll get started right away. We have 2 hours, which is not a lot to cover such a huge and dense topic, but I promise I will make it as fun as possible. Just a couple of things about me. I graduated in 2004 in the School of Dance. I have my BFA in Dance Performance and Choreography. I also have a master's in Nonprofit Leadership and Management from the University of San Diego, and I am a certified nonprofit professional. I have worked as an executive director and a development director and a grant writer for a variety of arts nonprofit organizations in San Diego. And I also served as a public funder, which means that I worked for the government. Yep, I was on the dark side. I worked for the city of San Diego for the Commission for Arts and Culture, and I was the senior manager of the arts and culture funding programs, which means that I oversaw about $50 million of public funding, and I was in charge of all the policies and procedures in terms of granting out public funds. So I've been on both sides of the table of grant writing in terms of writing and asking for money and then distributing money. So I have a very unique perspective that I would love to share with all of you. But before I did any of that, I was a volunteer grant panelist. And I think that really helped propel my grant writing and public funder experience, because I didn't know anything about grant writing. I just wanted to dive in and figure out who's making these decisions and how they made them. And so I served as a volunteer, and you can all do that too. You can serve on your local arts agencies, grant panel, like for LA County Arts Commission, or on the state level for California Arts Council, which I did for, gosh, I'd say about 10 years, which was really fun experience because I met a lot of people and I heard what, was happening in the room. So I was in the room where it happened. That's for all you Hamilton fans. I was in the room where it happened, and I can hear the dialogue that was going on. And that made me a stronger grant writer and a stronger just overall community member. I am a brand new founder and CEO and artistic director of my own nonprofit arts organization called Maraya Performing Arts here in sunny San Diego, which I opened during the pandemic, which is super crazy. I would not suggest that to anybody unless you're crazy like me. So today's objectives is we're going to go really, really high level. You're not going to be like a, Speedo grant writer overnight. You're just going to get like high level overview of the grant funding process, which is super, super dense. There's a lot of layers to it. So we're going to touch upon grants research, like where do you look? What type of funders are available out there? Making sure that you're finding the perfect match, that you're not just applying for here, there, and everything. It's kind of like a job. When you're applying for a job, you're not just applying, copy and pasting your resume and just sending it out there to everyone and anyone. The same thing. So I can see, Eileen, yes, you're interested in applying for funding to do your own projects rather than answering RFQs and RFPs. We want to make sure that you are looking for the right match and that you're applying for your funding or for your personal projects. And then we'll go through major components of your grant proposal. Every grant proposal is going to look different, whether you're part of an organization, you're an individual artist seeking your own funding. And grants is just one piece of the pie in terms of how you're going to seek out funding. I've worked for an organization. I'm an individual artist. I've been commissioned for work. I've had, organizations been commissioned for projects and been part of the artist team. So I've kind of seen a lot. We will just go through the grants part of it. I did teach a class this past summer called Funding Strategies for Artists, and we did kind of look at different slices of that funding pie. But just so you know, for today, we're just talking about grants. All right, so going on, grants research. So you always have to ask yourself the question, what do you want to raise funds for? Is it a project? If you're part of an organization, if you're an executive director or director of development, or you're leading an organization or want to start your organization, are you looking for general operations like a salary for yourself? Are you looking for internet, or I call them the non-sexy things, which are, utilities, rent, insurance, anything you need to operate that organization is usually called overhead or general operations. I would think for the most part, based on the chat, that a lot of you are individual artists, and probably once you graduate, or if you have graduated, you're looking for funding for your own personal project. So we'll run a little bit on the basis of that. If you are looking for a grant specific to your own personal project, you want to look and see if the funder is only inviting people. Some funders are very exclusive, like they are wanting you to, they want to know you a little bit before they ask you, they kind of want to date you before they ask you to marry them. So they want to invite you. Maybe they saw your work at Red Cat, or they went to a gallery opening or an art exhibit of yours, and they found your website and they messaged you and said, I would like to invite you to submit a proposal, a full proposal, a request. They're requesting for a proposal. So you'll see right here, RFP. They are requesting for you to submit a proposal to their XYZ foundation. Or they're like, yeah, that was a cute exhibit, but I'm not quite sure yet. I would like you to submit an RFQ or a letter of interest. RFQ is a request for qualifications. Basically, that is the first part of your dating process. They want to see your profile. So they're requesting for your qualifications to see if you meet their criteria. And then once you pass that part, you go on to like the next part, which would be the RFP, which is the full proposal. So there could be multiple steps in just getting that funding. As you can see, like you have to date people for a minute before they like give you $10,000. So there could be some that are like really quick and just like, give me a proposal. I love you. I just need the formality. I want to give you $10,000, but I need you to just fill out this piece of paper for me and we'll give you the 10 grand. And there might be some that are a little bit more conservative and say like, okay, can you send me a letter of interest first or a request for qualifications? Then we'll see if you like you, I like you, and if you meet my needs. And then once you meet my needs, then I will ask for more. And then I will see if you meet our full needs. And then we might or may not fund you. So it could be disheartening. There's a lot of no's before you got, there's also a lot of yeses. So with grants, you're kind of gambling. I want you also to be sure that you are clear in your intentions and that you're matching them to the funder guidelines and initiatives, that you're not just blindsidingly submitting anything and everything. if the funder says we only fund, first year BFAs, or we only fund mid career to established artists that have 10 plus or more experience, and you're like a first year BFA and you only have 2 years of making art, then you probably shouldn't apply. If the funder says we fund arts education, or we fund public art, or we fund this, or performing artists versus visual artists, and you're a visual artist or a performing artist applying for a funder that only funds visual arts, you probably shouldn't apply and waste their time or yours. I call this mission drifting. Do not mission drift to fit the grant guidelines. I've seen a lot of people do that, like make a project up just to get the funding. Like, for example, a funder's interested in, creative writers going into juvenile court and community schools, or working with incarcerated adults. And you've never done that before. And all of a sudden you're like, I work with incarcerated adults. Yes, I'm a writer and that's my jam. I'm going to go ahead and like go over here and drift into something that is foreign or not in my lane. Don't chase the money down, because again, you are wasting your time and theirs. You want to make sure it's like dating, right? On what's those, Tinder or whatever those apps are called. You want to make sure that that person or that funder is the right fit, that you match their profile and they match yours. So types of grant funders, there are a lot. The first one I want to start with are government. This is public funding. And a lot of times most of I'd say 100% of the times, it's coming from tax dollars, whether that's like hotel tax dollars generated from tourism, it's sales tax, or weed tax, or cigarette tax, or alcohol tax, or housing or taxes from like sales tax or something like that. Sometimes that revenue generated from taxes we pay as the public goes into a fund that then goes back into arts and culture. In San Diego, we have a local arts agency called the Commission for Arts and Culture, that the money that the commission gets is from TOT, which is transient occupancy tax. That is tax levied on people who come into San Diego as tourists that pay 10% tax when they stay in a hotel. So that money from hotel tourists goes back into arts and culture. And this year you can just, or past 2 years, you can just imagine San Diego did not have a lot of tourists because of COVID. So guess what? That fund is going to be like nothing. Like there's not going to be a lot of funding there. So when I know when that source of funding is going to start to dry up, or if I know like, ooh, Biden just dropped a bunch of cash into the NEA, or Biden just dropped a lot of CARES Act money into arts education or at whatever, then I would kind of follow what's happening politically and government-wise and tax-wise, locally, regionally, nationally, so that I understand if I'm chasing down dollars that are viable or not. These are some things that I know you want to be considering. I don't know where city of or LA gets their funding from. I assume most of you are in LA if you are current students. There's two arts agencies in LA, and I put the websites here that you can start to look up. And then here's our state government, and our governor and the past governor loves arts and culture. And if you're following what's happening in the state local arts agency, they just dropped another $40 million. And I'm like, oh, yay. I'm going to check out California Arts Council, because there's a lot of money there. And then the federal, there's money, but not as much, I'd say, in the state of California. So I'm going to leave this screen for just a second so I can show you what I'm talking about. So for the state art agency, which is like a great place for you to start researching, I'm here at the cac.gov or arts.cac.gov//opportunities. Here's like a nice place for all of you to start under opportunities. And it has jobs and it has artist calls. I saw one here actually. I was like, oh, you're welcome, CalArtians. You might like this because they are looking for public art or artists in Santa Clarita. If some of you are there in Santa Clarita, they're looking for, you can even search it by. So look, I'm at cac.gov opportunities. You can just like go down a deep dive up. Look, they want pet portraits. I don't know if any of you do pet portraits. Some of you, I saw your visual sidewalk poetry project. All look, this is all Santa Clarita. Bike racks. There you go. So there's artist calls on here. There's also different types of grant programs and applications here. Sometimes they do them for individual artists, and sometimes they do them for organizations. So for individual artists, I always thought this, gosh, I don't want to have to start my nonprofit, my own nonprofit. What a waste of time and a lot of work for me to do that when I just want to be an artist. So sometimes I've strategically aligned myself with a nonprofit arts organization that I've asked, could I be your artist in residence, or could I be, are you doing a project where you're looking for a choreographer or a movement consultant or whatever it is, visual artist, photographer, whatever it is that you do, and apply with that arts organization as your fiscal agent, your fiscal sponsor, or your arts organization that writes you in as the individual artist of residence. We'll talk a little bit more about fiscal sponsors in just a minute, but I thought this was a great place. This is a great place for you to just begin your initial search. This has, it's not just California, I believe. They kind of go, no, I'm sorry, it is California. So for those of you in California, you see how you can look Central Coast, LA, National, Northern California. Some of these might even accept non-Californians, but you'd have to look. So you can see how just even looking at one, let's just look at this sidewalk poetry project one, for example. I don't know if they would accept out-of-town artists, but see how there's a Santa Clarita Arts. You can just apply here, and the deadline's November 30th. So this is about the theme is identify home. It's a poem, should reflect on connection to physical or emotional spaces. And here's their application. Looks like they have quite a bit. So you can just go on here and start doing the application. What I like to do is I like to try to connect with somebody at this arts commission. So I would look at like whoever their contact is. And I literally, it sounds sort of salesy, but like you have to sell yourself as an artist, right? You can't just like blindly, like if you're introverted and you're like, I'll just send a resume. It's like sending a cover letter and resume and you never call anybody, and you just kind of like stand by and hope and pray like, oh my God, I hope they call me, right? It's always like better to try to call or reach out, say, oh, I looked at your, so-and-so. You just find somebody like, oh, I submitted an application and my name is such and such. And if there's any, questions, or you kind of want to try to connect to somebody, because a lot of projects that I've gotten or jobs I've gotten was because I knew somebody there was like this 6 degrees of separation, like, oh, so-and-so knew so-and-so who knew so-and-so, and I got the job. Or there's a way that my work got shown. So I would recommend seeing if maybe somebody at Cal Arts knows somebody from Santa Clarita Arts. I don't know. If you can't, no big deal, but I always try to go that extra step to see if I can make a relationship with somebody, because funding and even grant writing, even though you're submitting a piece of paper, is about relationships. So that is one place to start, is this, and then this site where you're under opportunities. Starting, I think in January, February, you want to maybe get on their California Arts Council's newsletter so you can get alerted when their grant applications open, because they have a lot of different grant opportunities for organizations, for artists, different individual artists. So you'd have to, again, look under each, see how you can scroll there or click there, and you just want to know the individual artist fellowships or these, or, operational support, you want to look there. So this is kind of like a nice, good start for you California artists who are looking for individual artists projects. You'll spend hours just going down this rabbit hole. All right, let me go back to my screen share here. I'm going to look at one question. So Sarah says, I make art from non-recycled trash with a socio-political bent. Many arts organizations mention the types of media they want, but they sure don't list junk or trash. How closely do I have to align with their list of mediums? I realize photography grants are not for me, but if they list painting, printing, making, drawing, and sculpture, do I apply or look for grantors that list mixed media only? Sarah, I wouldn't close yourself off to just being one thing. I've never seen funders say mixed media, that they're only looking for a specific type of artist. If you look at those opportunities under California Arts Grant Council, they won't say that. I think your art sounds fascinating. I think you need to talk about the art itself and not focus just on the type of art you're making, but more about the impact of the art you're making. So it's not about what you're making, it's about why you're making it. I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. That's going to lead into your why you make art and what's compelling about your art, that will lead to why funders will give you the money. And then they'll say, okay, now what are you going to do? I understand why you're going to make art and why it's going to make an impact to our constituents, to our community, to our, whatever. And then let's talk about what you're going to do. Don't start with what I'm going to do, because who cares? Everyone makes art. What I do as a photographer, what I do as a choreographer, anyone can do that. But what's going to set you apart is the impact your art is going to make and why you make what you make. And that should be the number one. So let me go back to my screen here. We've learned about public funders, and I put it right here, search opportunities where you can go under California Arts Council, and then grant programs to start your rabbit hole search. And then here's some other government public funders that you can look at. Important notes about government funders. Sometimes they want you to be a 501c3, a nonprofit organization. Remember, I said you can try to align with, like, if you're a photographer, can you go to a MOPA, or, in San Diego, we have an organization called the Aja Project, or Outside the Lens. I start to find those nonprofits that are, photography-based organizations and get in with them. You can also go with a fiscal sponsor that has nothing to do with art, like a Boys and Girls Club or a church or something like that. Right now, I'm in the middle of getting my own 501c3, and it's going to take 5 months for me to get that piece of paper that says I'm a 501c3. That's not to say I haven't won. I've won a lot of individual artist grants by myself. And then I've also applied with fiscal sponsors. And my fiscal sponsor right now is called Bayside Community Services, and they help small businesses, particularly, marginalized communities, such as myself. So they're a big nonprofit, and they're just basically, I hate to use the word pass through, but they are kind of. So I've just applied with the city of San Diego, and they're requiring that the artist or that you are a 501c3 or you have a fiscal sponsor or fiscal agent. And my fiscal agent, so the applicant on record is Bayside Community Services. So I use their history, I use their board, I use their financials, and then I'm the artist. And they're basically a social service agency. So I have no competition. Nobody else is applying with a social service agency. And some funders are starting to get more savvy and say, like, how do we get more funding to individual artists? So the city of San Diego actually got savvy, and I'm sure other cities are allowing fiscal sponsors. And the city of San Diego had a little section on their website that said, here are the list of approved fiscal sponsors. Pick one of these people. So I went through that list and I picked one of those people, and I reached out to them and I said, I would like you to be my fiscal sponsor. I had a quick little interview and they said, yes, we will accept you, but we will take 10% of whatever funding you get. So if I get $50,000, they get $5,000, and they get $5,000 to administer that grant. So they have to do a lot of legwork. Like, I had to ask them for their board list, for their financials. They have to do all the, contracting, the insurance. So to me, that's worth me not having to apply for my whole entire 501c3. There's another organization called fracturedatlas.org, and they provide fiscal sponsorships to individual artists. So if you're applying for with a foundation or government, and they say you have to have somebody that has a 501c3, and you maybe only do 1 or 2 grants a year, you can become a member of Fractured Atlas as an individual. And I think it's like $10 a month. I did that, but I found that I wasn't applying for enough grants to substantiate that monthly cost. So that's why I went with Bayside Community Services, because I didn't want to pay the $10 a month. The reason why I didn't like Fractured Atlas is because they do not, again, they don't do government grants. They do not do government grants. And a lot of the grants I was going for and needed a fiscal sponsorship for was government grants. And the reason why I like government grants is because they're larger dollar amounts. But if you have like smaller grant amounts, like with a community foundation or a private foundation, which I'll talk about in a little bit, and they're giving $5,000 grants or $1,000, and they want to give them to 501c3s, maybe Fractured Atlas is a good way to start. Or say you want to start your own group or something, or collective of artists or something, and you're trying to raise $50,000, and you have major donors who are like, I'll give you $5,000, such and such artist collective, but I want to give it to a 501c3 because I want the tax deduction. Then you can say, well, great, such and such donor, give us the $5,000 because we are fiscally sponsored by Fractured Atlas. And so such and such donor gives that $5,000 to Fractured Atlas. They at Fractured Atlas administers the funding for you. gives that donor their tax write-off letter, and everybody win-win, and you get the money. And I think they take a little bit of a fee too. Maybe it's like 7 or 8%, plus you pay the $10 a month. So there are workarounds for you to not have to start your own 501c3. Trust me, it is a lot of work. I've ran and I'm starting. I went down the rabbit hole just because I have a lot of funders wanting to fund us, and a lot of government funds that are asking us to do this, and I've had to cave and do it. Sometimes public funders want you to have at least 2 years of operating history. I don't have that. I'm brand new. I'm only 9 months old. So that's why Bayside Community Services, my fiscal agent, helps me become eligible. They help me become eligible because they have a strong financial position. They have a strong balance sheet, and they have like $600,000 operating cash. I have like 600. I have like nothing. So with them being like my parent, and I'm like the child. So when parent and child go in, it's like going in for a car loan and you need like a co-signer. Bayside is basically like my co-signer to say like, I will not default because look, my parents got my back. So that's some of the things that I looked for when I was looking for a fiscal agent. You want to look if there's a cash matching requirement. Sometimes funders are like, oh, if we give you 5,000, you better show that you have 5,000. They don't want you to be the only source of funding. Another thing you want to look for is this a contract for services versus a grant? With a lot of public art contracts, they're basically hiring you to do a job. It is like you are a contractor, and some people get that confused with a grant. A grant is where they're like, we love you, we mean it, here's $10,000, do your thing. And then with a contract, it's like, we love you, but we're going to ask you to do this by this time, and we will contract you to do this, and this. And then we want you to pay for it up front and then submit an invoice for reimbursement. So this is where it gets kind of tricky tricks, especially for public artists, because when I worked at the city of San Diego and we hired public art folks, or even some organizations, we would say, you go ahead and do that project. You spend the money up front. That's why sometimes they ask for a cash match, because they want to make sure you can front part of that project, whether it's your paints, your staff, your administrators, whatever, your internet. And then you need to send them an invoice saying, we did part of the project, now can you, and you have to be able to absorb those costs and wait for them. Sometimes it takes 5 months to get your money back. And so you just really need to make sure when that money's coming in, because it could affect and impact whether or not you apply and whether or not you can do it. So that's when I talk about, well, that's when I advise you to look at whether it's a reimbursement, or they're going to straight up drop you a $10,000 check, or you're going to wait for that $10,000 check. Sometimes also with grant government funders, you need all this hoopla, and it's not fun. It's not cute. Other types of grant funders, there's corporate funders. Usually I like go downtown and I look up and I go, oh, look, Target, US Bank, oh, Procopio, oh, Wells Fargo. Typically they do not fund individuals. So again, if you are tied to some organization, see if they can apply to a corporate funder. See if you can. I've rarely seen this, but perhaps, we can hope that corporate funders are getting a little bit more savvy. You have to think they're corporations. Their bottom line is usually money. And a lot of corporations are starting to get into like corporate social responsibility, and they want to give back, but they want to make sure that they have the tax write-off as an incentive. So that's why they want the 501c3s. Sometimes they do matching donations. So if you're like, hey, I raised $5,000, can you match at $5,000? That can give them more of an incentive to fund you. You can always go to your own bank and inquire. I've done that before. Like, no shame. I have no shame. I'm just like, hey, Chase Bank, do you have any funds for individual artists? You just never know what they're going to say. And then there are community foundations. There's probably like, we have San Diego Foundation in San Diego. I'm sure there's like whatever, Seattle, wherever you are in the country, your city community foundation. And you can start to look under there if they have, I call this more like a bank. So your community foundation is like, wow, we have all these, like maybe US Bank is as a corporate foundation stores their money at the community foundation. Maybe there is like the Zuckerberg Family Trust or the Bill Gates Family Trust that stores their money at the San Diego Foundation or the XYZ Community Foundation. And they're like the bank of funders. And that bank of funders helps these rich people like Bill Gates or Zuckerberg or whoever manage their funds, because Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg are just so busy. They don't have time to give away their own money. They're like, we need help at the community foundation, the Silicon Valley Community Foundation, to give our money, and they can set the parameters. So Mark Zuckerberg might say something like, I want to give to animators in their third year of college who are people of color and identify as LGBTQ+. Silicon Valley Community Foundation, make it happen. So then the Silicon Valley Community Foundation might put out an application, and then you apply to the Silicon Valley Community Foundation and you get Mark Zuckerberg's money. So if you're on the hunt, you can look at your local community foundation and see if they have funds available. A lot of times they're really, I like it because it's a grant. It's not a contract for service. They're just like, oh, Mark Zuckerberg loves you. Here's $50,000. Go have fun. And it's really easy. That's why I like to diversify and mix it with some community foundations. This one I love. So there are other people who do fiscal sponsorships too, besides Fractured Atlas. Fractured Atlas I know is national, which is kind of cool. Okay, so I'm just assuming most of you are in LA, you're CalArtian, and you are looking for funding. And where do you start? So I gave you that California Arts Council opportunities one, so you can look anywhere in California. You can also look under SoCalGrantmakers.org member portal. This is in the slide deck. This is like my favorite way to stock funders. So you go under the member portal, and what basically SoCal Grantmakers or any grantmaker association is a conglomerate of grant makers, people who give out money that come together once a month or whatever, and they talk about philanthropy and best practices and philanthropy and giving out funds. So I go, oh my God, where are all these rich people at? Oh my God, here they are. So then you can start looking at, here they are, AARP, and there might be somebody like the Actors Fund. Maybe you're an actor and you're like, oh my God, Amundsen. Don't we all know Amundsen? Like, isn't there a theater downtown LA named after Herb Alpert? I know Herb Alpert's a musician. So you can start to look here, and you can see, remember, corporate foundation, private independent foundation, family foundation. See why I wasn't lying. Asian Pacific Community Fund. So if you're Asian American like me, I would maybe go down this rabbit hole and see what they're funding. We did look at this one, Herb Alpert Foundation, because we do all kind of know Herb Alpert, right? And you could look, now you can go to their website and look and see. You just kept going rabbit hole, rabbit hole, rabbit hole. I did do a little bit rabbit hole searching for you to then come to find out that this is invitation only. So if y'all have some, maybe reach out to CalArts or Carolyn or anybody that knows Herb Alpert Foundation that can get you an in or in like an invitation to submit or invite them to come to your art exhibit, your performance, or whatever. If you're like a jazz musician or anything, because they do fund individuals, if you can see here. Because I was thinking about applying for myself and I was like, wait, how do I get in here? And I noticed there's some people I know. I was like, wait a minute, I know Kimberly. So here's like the grantees. And then here's another way you can look at it. You look at the grantees and then you go, oh my God, Red Cat, what? You know, like we know Red Cat. How did they get funding? You know, so and then I look at like the individuals. I looked at the individuals and I saw a playwright named Kimberly, who I'm working with on a show right now. So I'm gonna call up Kimber and say, how did you get money from the Herb Alpert Foundation? But do you see how it's not just a straight direct, let me go here, there's an application, there's a lot of like back behind the scenes work you have to do just to get a gosh darn application or figure out even how to apply. So that's just one example. You might go in here and you might find like, oh, my bank is on here. Oh my God. Or I remember I went to go see that play at the Almonson that was, you know, and in the back of the program or in the playbill or on the wall of that museum, I saw whatever, Alaska Airlines, or I saw the Atlas Family Foundation, or I know John Atlas or whoever. This is where you start to go down the rabbit, but see how it can just go on for pages. And it's like looking through like an old school telephone book or encyclopedia. Like if any of it, I'm dating myself, but you know, like this can just go on and on and on and on, as you can see. So finding that perfect match, it's like finding the partner of your dreams can take years. I'm just kidding. But it can take some time just for you to find that profile that fits you. Yeah, so this is under SoCal Grant Makers members. This is me looking at the members who are part of this conglomerate of grant makers. So here's all grant makers that are just like, we need to know how to give away our money. Well, great. I can help you out with that. Okay, it looks like I'm in my 40s. I'm in my late 40s. So I've been doing this quite some time, and it's taken me quite some time just to get this grant research part down. Now I start to have a calendar of like, I know when these cycles are happening every year, like with California, like I know my go-to funders, like California Arts, my local ones, my national ones. I try to stay local as much as possible because a lot of my work is regional. So I have these funders on my radar, and I have a spreadsheet that I've started that says when their cycles are due, and it kind of helps me keep track of what I've applied for, what I'm a match for, like who said no, who said yes. I'll share that with you. I'll send it to Carolyn to send to you. I want to clean it up first because it's a mess right now. Let's see. I'm just going to look in the chat. Let's see, or questions. I have a question that says, when it comes to receiving grants from the California Arts Council, is the process the same for international students? I'm not quite sure. You know, the program officers at any foundation or government, I used to be a program officer, and it's our job to be available. Like we're like the concierge of any questions you might have related to your grant. So I would always reach out to the program officer before you apply, just to make sure that you're not wasting again time before you go down that whole rabbit hole. Sometimes I've worked when I was the executive director for the Aja project, we have worked with international artists. We work with Shinpei Takeda, who lived in Germany. He's Japanese American, but also worked in Tijuana, and we are about 2 miles away from the US Mexico border. So Shinpei was kind of like everywhere. And there were times that Shinpei was commissioned for a project that we won an award for as the organization, and um, the organization hired Shinpei as the international artists. California Arts Council has more organizational grants than they do individual artist grants. Actually, historically, they have not funded individuals. It's sort of unprecedented this past year that they have funded individuals. And I think they're going to continue to do it next year. But because we know that there was just like a 40 or $60 million infusion for that, but it could not, you can't rely on that to happen every year. So Simonetti, if there's a way that you can attach yourself to a 501c3 organization to apply on your behalf and then deal with like how they pay you, because we had to figure out how to get visas and like a way to pay Shinpei once we were awarded those funds. I hope that answered your question. And then Sarah, in terms of application fees, there should not be any. You're welcome, Simonetti. There should not be any application fees unless you're working with like a fiscal sponsor or a grant writer that you're willing to pay. And ethically, as professional fundraisers, there's like a code of conduct that fundraisers won't take like a commission of whatever grant. Like I've seen people ask me, oh, can we hire you as a grant writer? And if you win the grant, we'll give you 10% commission. I'm like, I'm not a real estate agent. Like it doesn't work that way. It's like, this is my fee. Like whether you get the grant or not, you're paying me $1,000 to write the grant or whatever fee I say, $300 an hour or whatever it is. It is what it is, whether you get it or not. Because you can get $100,000 grant and I will still get my $1,000. You get a $10,000 grant and I'll still get my fee. It's really not ethical to pay a grant writer a commission based on winning a grant, because it's not really cool to do that. And there shouldn't be any application fees that I'm aware of, unless you have to show proof of like insurance or proof of vaccination, or you have to do a live scan or something like that. So you'd have to, yes, we will get to that, writing the component of the grant. But I always like to start with the grant research part because you can't write a grant unless you know how to match it, make sure you're matched for it. So I want to make sure that you all are matching yourself to knowing everything you need to do to get ready to apply for a grant. All right, so I hope that answered your question. All right, next order of business is, so we've figured out how to research. I've given you all these tools, how to research, where to find them, make sure that you're a match. And then we're going to, let me share screen again. All right, so remember, other places you can look are like the playbills, donor walls, people's websites. Like you have to be like a professional stalker and start writing down like people maybe that are like a photographer like you, or like an animator like you, or a dancer like you, and start looking to see where other people get their funding that are similar to your métier. And then you can also look on this website, Canadaorg. If you're willing to pay money, there's a thing, it's basically like the Google of grants. It's like $50 per month for an individual. And this is called Canadaorg. And it shows you like basically how to find and you'll see right here, grants to individuals, requests for proposals. This is where you can find funding. But again, you have to pay for that. Pros and cons of grants. Pros is like you can get like a large amount of money, like $50,000, $100,000. It could be less expensive than other forms of fundraising. Like, you know, if you do like everyone's like, let's do a golf tournament, let's do a gala. I'm like, why? You have to spend all this money and the time on linens and stuff that people don't care about. Or an annual campaign where you're like, you know, sending direct mail or anything like that. That costs money, right? And a lot of time. So grants, maybe not. The time you spend researching you can equate that to money, but some people just like writing grants, and it's just easier. It could be a one-man show or one woman show or one person show. They're accessible and easier to reach than individuals. It's not like we all have Oprah's phone number on speed dial or Mark Zuckerberg's number on speed dial. Like we'd be like, yo, what's up, Oprah? Can you give me 100 grand? Yeah, that's not really feasible. Cons are like, you can tell I've already spent just an hour or 45 minutes just on research, right? Decisions they cannot respond for 5 months. And then receiving those actual funds, it's not like you apply for a grant and you start doing your project. You have to wait like a long time sometimes. And then once they like, we are going to award you for funding, you start the project, and then 5 months later you get the money. And other things we talked about, like that might be matching requirements, or there might be restrictions like you cannot start your project and it must happen between September 1st, 2022 and October 2023. Like could be restrictions on that. Basic components of a grant proposal. I want you to think about when you find that perfect match and you're like, this sounds good, I'm going to go for it, I'm submitting. You want to act like you're submitting a job application. So there are components, like if it's not a funder that's accepting online applications, that they actually want, some funders are still like old school and they want you to send something USPS, you know, FedEx or whatever. Write a cover letter, right? And some funders I've written, they make you fill out their personal cover letter. Like it's weird, but trust me, don't forget the cover letter. You wouldn't submit a job application without a cover letter, right? So put a cover letter, make your little cute letterhead or whatever, have all your contact information on there, your address, your mailing address, your website, your social media's phone number, all of that, your cell phone, make sure it's all correct. If you're an organization, you might want your basic background info, like your mission, vision, values, your artistic statement. If you have an artist statement, which I recommend you all have, your artist statement shouldn't just be like, I'm a visual artist, I'm a multimedia artist, I'm a sculptor, I'm a painter. And I go, yeah, so what? Like as a funder, former public funder, I've read so many of, this is what I do, this is why I do it. I take recycled materials and I upcycle them, and I take fabric and I blah, blah, blah. And I go, yeah, who cares? Not to be rude, but I'm just like, and so why should I give you money? Because I'm an animator. And I'm like, and so artist statement where I can connect to you personally. I'll give you an example of mine. And then that compels me to say, wow, this person's really trying to make an impact on the world, reduce carbon footprint. They were impacted because blah, blah, blah. Something about you and why you do what you do, and why you do what you do makes you do what you do. Yes, not just here's what I do. So then your narrative, that we're going to talk about your narrative, which is also maybe your artist statement, your needs statement. This is your why. For some of you who are connected to arts organizations, so I'm addressing, some of you might end up going into, so that was my career trajectory. I couldn't always do it as an individual artist. I had to work a day job inside an arts organization. So I had to write grants for arts organizations that hired artists. And we were trying to address a need, maybe like reading comprehension levels for K through second graders at a specific school, and we used maybe participatory photography or theater or songwriting as a way to address the low literacy rates. So my logic model or theory of change is um, kids in low income communities have been disproportionately impacted by COVID because they're living in multi-generational households, have not been, you'll find some research to support that they are reading lower grade level. So now you're coming in with this project. Maybe it's that street poetry project that's going to be in front of their school, in front of the street. That's going to have like Dr. Seuss Cat in the Hat words or something for them to walk to their classroom, and then it's reading words or something like that. So you have to say why you're doing your art, not just like my art is so cool. And not to be mean, but I feel like sometimes CalArtians are, I know I'm a CalArtian. Oh my God, my art is so cool. Like it's beautiful, it's cool, it's stunning. And some funders are really about funding something aesthetically beautiful, forward thinking, experimental. And you could talk to that. And then there are some that are, somebody talked about social political point of views. There are a lot of funders now. It's like the flavor of the month that people are talking about funding marginalized communities and racial justice and anything social politically charged. That's a lot. If you look through my grants research, you'll start to look at the funders and why they are funding art. Remember why they are funding art and why you're funding your art should match with theirs. Other parts of the proposal would be goals and objectives. I'll talk about how you write goals that are measurable. So you want to make sure that your goals aren't like, I have a goal to make an art project. Yeah, so you have a goal to help increase. You want to see a change in behavior. You want to see a change, something life-saving, life-changing, something changing. So if I was doing my poetry art project at such and such elementary school where I know there's low literacy rates for kinder through second grade, I would say my goal is to increase the literacy rate for 30 students of color in kindergarten at Cook Elementary School. Do you see how it's very specific? It's measurable. I can say before my art project, these 30 kids were reading had basically pre-K or like did not know how to read the words of this book. Then I did my art project and I did my art project. And then I reached my goal of getting these kids to increase their literacy rate because every day they saw my my poetry art project that led to their classroom, and it said hop on pop, hop on pop, hop on pop, or whatever. And then by the end of my 10-week residency or my whatever poetry art project, these kids were reading at second grade level or something like that. So there needs to be a why, and there needs to be goals and objectives that you can measure where you something changed because of your art, not because your art was cool. Or maybe it's your art was cool that people have a deeper appreciation for whatever projection design or poetry or something like that. And your evaluation methods could be things as simple as getting a baseline survey of where these kids are reading at kindergarten before your art project. And then, maybe getting their grades or their attendance rate or something, or their book reports or whatever it is, to assess their reading level before your art project. And then after that 10-week residency and you do your art project, there's something that assesses them again. So then you take the baseline and maybe you do like a survey or you do a simple test or something, test them on a few words. And then at the end, you give them that same test and then you test them again. And you bet your bottom dollar that they're probably going to be improved reading. And that's how you'll know you've made an impact. You can see a change from beginning to end because of your art project. Budget. Oh, this is my favorite part. This is my favorite part. I work with youth right now in my company. I just submitted a proposal, RFQ, a request for qualifications, or the first part of a two-part proposal to get some money for a youth theater production. Moana Junior for my Disney animators out there. We're doing Moana Junior, and I'm looking to produce this show for a youth audience. And so I had to put together a budget for how much is the project, how much am I asking for from this one funder, and what other sources of funding will I get? So this funder was really nice because they gave us a pre template, and you can copy this, you can change the formulas, you can rewrite it however you want, but it's pretty standard for what a lot of project budgets look like. This can be for individual projects. This can be used for like organizational. You can adapt it to be an organizational budget, whatever. But basically, I put my name or our organization's name, our project. This is, again, the funders template. This is all their stuff. And then this is what they pre-populated right here. And all I had to do is like plug in the numbers, which was so nice. So I just plugged in the numbers, and then I plugged in some notes for them and for me. For them, because I'm thinking of panelists reading my budget, and I'm already anticipating what questions they would ask. And this is because I've sat in that room where it happened as a volunteer grant panelist for many, many years. I already can anticipate what they're going to say, what the panelists will ask, because I just know. And they're going to go, oh, that doesn't seem realistic. Oh, they're too young of an organization. Or where are they going to get that money from? Oh, 20,000, really? So I put in the notes with basically, I'm like, you know what, shut up, because I know exactly where I'm getting the funding from. So here's my local government. Remember, we talked about government sources of funding. Remember, you can get it from your regional LA County or LA Cultural Arts, and then you have LA County. You have different LAs in there. And then maybe you have, a county. So in city of San Diego, we have two, like LA, I think you have a city and a county. We have that too. So we have the City Arts Commission, and we have the County of San Diego. So I put in both. And this project is not until November 2022. So that's like a year, 12 months. So I'm already starting to fundraise now, and I still feel a little behind. Like, oh my God, this project is, if you look at the bottom, this project is $72,000. Okay. And where am I going to get that money? So I'm already thinking a year in advance, how the heck am I going to pay for this $72,000 project? And I've already secured the venue. I've got the rights. So those are things that have been already paid for because I've gotten grant money for it. So you have to already be thinking that far ahead, maybe even longer, sometimes 2 years in advance, because it could take you that long to get that money. So local government, like I talked about, is your regional, your cities, wherever you live. State government, California Arts Council. I think this is actually conservative. So how do I even make up these numbers? I look at past grantees. So if it's your first time applying and you have no experience, you have to look at California Arts Council. Again, this is part of the research. I know some of you are just anxious to just write the grant. I don't want you to get too anxious to just, haphazardly put in numbers. Those numbers have to have rationale behind it. So I did research on California Arts Council. I looked back at their past grantees, first time grantees, third year grantees, and looked at how much do they typically fund? Is 5,000 conservative? Is it way out of their ballpark? Maybe they only fund 1,000. And here I am looking like a fool asking for 5,000 when they only give 1,000. Or maybe I'm lowballing myself and they start at 15,000 as the minimum and I'm only putting 5,000. So you have to do research behind the numbers before you start to plug them in to see what is realistic and feasible. To me, I feel pretty confident about county and city. County has already given me $20,000 so far. City, this is my first time applying. So I'm a little like, maybe I won't get funded. So I'm not going to put the full amount. Like I asked for 20, I'm getting 20. I asked for 20 from the city, I'm getting 20. I asked for 20 from the county, I'm getting 20. So I kind of went in between, right? So these are like my notes. California Arts Council, I know they give $5,000 grants. I've been with them for a long time, volunteered for a long time and sat on those panels. That's super conservative. But as a first time applicant going in, I feel like good. Cal Humanities, I've been awarded Cal Humanities grants before. I've gotten $5,000. And here's two brand new, these are family foundations and corporate foundations that I'm applying to. So see how they're under foundation grants. I feel 5,000 is conservative. I can probably go 10, but that makes me nervous because if Nordson or Boys and Girls Club don't give me 5,000, then I'm screwed. Here's where I went kind of like, woo, risky. Board dues and a fundraising event. I have a pretty kick-ass board right now. They all have capacity to raise money. And I'm going to put it on my board to each raise $5,000. And they've already offered to put an event for me. And I'm going to give this to the board to raise $25,000. In kind means something you would have paid for, but you're getting in exchange for free. So say, for example, I have to pay for food for my kids and their families and snacks. And when we have like long tech days, and then we do headshots for the kids, that probably would combine cost me $5,000. But a parent, one of my board members is actually a photographer, and then a parent has volunteered to do all the snacks and food. Great. That saves me $5,000. So that's in kind $5,000 that they are giving me that I would have paid for, but I'm not. So I'm putting in as in kind. Earned revenue. So that's contributed revenue. That's all in like different kinds of money people are going to give me. They're just going to give me out of the goodness of their heart. Right? Earned revenue is where you're doing, it's a fee for service, a fee for service. So membership dues, this is what I call production fees for my students. So for anybody that auditions and wants to be in the show, they have to pay $325. So great, your cast is Moana, awesome, $325. And the parent has to pay that. And if I have 25 students in the show, each paying $325, that's how much I get. Ticket sales. Some of you might have an exhibition or you might have a show, you're going to sell tickets. Great. How many tickets? How many shows? How many I call it seat places. How many shows? You're going to do 5 nights of shows with 50 seats in it. Do you think you're going to sell out 50 seats each night? Or you're going to do 40 seats at each night? Whatever it is. Say you're going to sell out 50 seats each night for 5 shows. It's 250 places times how much you're going to sell. Are you going to do like VIP experience, like $100? You get backstage pass and whatever, or you're doing a screening of a film, like, ooh, make it all VIP. Like you're the first to see my, you know, animated film, and you're going to do a screening. You can do like $100, make it all, you get a signed something. You got to figure out a way to sell your art. And this is the part I know a lot of artists hate, because they forget that art is a business. Our art is our commodity and our livelihood. And we have to figure out a way. And I did not learn this until I learned the hard way and was out of college at Cal Arts and going like, oh my God, how am I going to make money? I'm going to make money off my art. Oh, here's how I do it. Right? Selling tickets or admissions, do a VIP sort of thing, or maybe you do a cocktail hour or something extra, back behind the scenes tour, or early access to something, and you sell the tickets for that. Maybe you have merchandise like you, or your art, like you only have 10 prints of that special whatever photographer, or uh, 10 prints of that SpongeBob thing or whatever, animation. Um, you have t-shirts printed or magnets or, tchotchkes or whatever that you sell. So you would put that there. That's earned revenue, a fee for service or a fee for a product or a fee for something. Like you're basically, it's not a donation. They're like, ooh, give me something. Great. Here's an experience, or here's a thing. Pay me money. So you have to make sure that when you're doing a project, that you're diversifying your revenue, so that you're not just like all or nothing. If I don't get this grant, then this project ain't happening. That's really going to put you in a very vulnerable position. I've seen artists kind of go down that trap, and they're like, oh man, I can never do my art. And you're like, no, but what if you sell it? Or what if you do a screening? Or what if you do this? Like what if you do sponsorships? Some people want, if you're like, an emerging artist, and like people are like, oh my God, I can't wait for your film screening. Like, great. Like you can sponsor it. I'll put your logo on my website, or whatever. They want more visibility of their business, or they want to be attached to your mission or your art or whatever. And then say, oh, great, you can become a sponsor for $1,000. I can put you on our step and repeat wall at the opening. We'll have our programs and put your logo on the front cover. If you donate more, yours is at the top cover. There's so many ways. You have to think entrepreneurial. Be an entrepreneur. We're the salespeople of our art. Either we're selling it through grants or we're selling it like straight up. So the budget to me is such like the pivotal part of your everything, of your grant. This is like, as me as a grant panelist, this is the first place I look. I don't know why. It's just like I'm obsessed with budgets, and the artist statement, because I will see how realistic it is. And then I look at your bio to go like, really? You're going to raise 60 grand? Let me see. Have you raised 60 grand before? This is your first grant out of the bat. You've never fundraised before, and you're saying you're going to bring in 60 grand. I'm like, oh yeah, I call bullshit, So like that's when it's not realistic. And I'm like, I'm going to score low on budget for this, or financial capacity, because this just doesn't seem for real. Or if you write in here, you can write in secured, already. That would make me, I'm not trying to be arrogant, but I know that my reputation, the social capital I've built over the years, and my experience as a fundraiser is going to make my financial capacity look strong. And me having the Bayside Community Services and their strong financial position and board, and if I put secured 20 grand already, that's going to look good, and it's going to look realistic. But if you are like, this is my first time and I'm not doing anything else except for this grant, then it's going to look like, I'm not sure I want to fund this person. They're asking me to marry them right before I just met them. So you got to think about those things. Here's our favorite part as artists, because we like to spend money, right? So expenses, you got to think of all, and you can do a separate page that line items out each, like itemizes out each person. I just lump sum it because the panelists, this is what they gave me. But I'll probably have a separate budget that says how much will I pay the director, the choreographer, my administrators, the technical director, music director, musicians. Because I mean, if some of you in performing arts, you'll see there's like a lot of people involved. Even in your or filmmakers, you know, you'll have your post and your DPs and your, you know, there's a lot of people involved in projects, big projects like this. Facility space rental. While I have my own brick and mortar studio space, I didn't put that in here. I should have. I just didn't. I'm stupid. I probably should have did that now that I'm looking at it in retrospect. I only put in the theater rental. So the theater rental, thanks, Jen. And thanks, Sarah. The facilities and space rental, I've already called the Croc Theater. I have to rent it. It's $2,500 a day. And they include like, you know, some of the technicians and microphones and stuff like that. So 25, I already got that quote. But see how I've already, it's not until November. And for me to write this grant, I wrote this last month. And I had to think 20, oh my God, I already have to secure the venue and ask for the pricing to just get this $15,000 number just to make the budget. It says, it seems like an artist or arts organization might not be expert enough to evaluate changes that might happen. Would a grant also have to pay for an outside evaluator? So many, that's such a great question. So many people say, oh, not a lot. I know so many $1 million, like $29 million arts organizations. I've worked for them that don't have evaluators. And they should. But make it simple. Artists, you can do something simple like draw how you're feeling today. If you're measuring like social emotional growth, or if you're testing reading skills, whatever it is you're testing, we are creative. We can measure it in our own way with a survey, or like I've done this before. I worked with graffiti artists, young youth graffiti artists, and I just did a focus group. I had like 5 sets of questions, and I said I was trying to measure their propensity to get into an artistic field or career rather than like working at Bonds or a grocery store for the rest of their lives. And I had them just draw, like, what do you see yourself doing in 5 years? And they just draw. I take those sketches and I start to analyze them, you know, and do a focus group, write down 5 words of what you think you're going to do in whatever 5 years, or your profession in 5 years. Then we do the intervention. Our intervention was, you know, take them to field trips, give them mentorship with other graffiti artists or visual artists, museum curators. And then at the end of that 10-week or whatever semester program, ask those same questions again, have them sketch out again, and then see if there was any change. If there wasn't any change, no big deal. Like, we have to try these things to see what works and what doesn't. And then you can always adapt and change. And the evaluation should be truthful. Like, hey, we measure at the beginning, before the program or before my art thing, this is what the kids were feeling and saying how they're, well, whatever, these are the questions we asked. Afterwards, this is what we asked. It can be super, super simple. And then just don't be so hard on yourself. I mean, it could be a Google form, Survey Monkey. It could be like chalkboard art. Like, let's all just like get some spray paint or some markers and just like, you know, or a Zoom doodle thing, you know, where everybody just types on a doodle or Zoom chalkboard or something like that. It doesn't have to be that fancy. Just get creative with it and understand what you're trying to measure and what change you're trying to make. Okay, so going on artistic expenses, so projections, sets, costumes, you know, whatever it is that you put in there, there it is. print ads, Facebook ads, graphic design. There's my marketing, my office supplies, my equipment rental, printing and copying, blah, 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 offsite insurance, trucking. So see how there's just, you can revise these lines to do whatever. I mean, these can be also for an art exhibit, it can be for a film. You can start to put in like whatever start to put your budget notes in here that makes sense for you, and also sort of give a high level overview to the panelists that are reading it. Because if they're, panelists could be Mark Zuckerberg and his friends, or it could be for government funders, community members that may or may not know you. So you have to pretend like you're writing to a job recruiter. You don't know, they don't know you don't know them, and you have to make it as clear as possible. So that is the budget. So if you're with an organization, there are some other things they ask. This is why I love having my fiscal sponsor. I'm like, can you just give this to me? And it's so nice because they just email everything and I just attach it. Their staff and their board bios, their financials. Like, I don't have any of this. Their 501c IRS determination letter, it's easy when you have a fiscal sponsor that is like a good solid, they've been around for like 42 years or something like that. So it's a really, really nice partnership. Here's, example, I'm not just going to breeze through this, of a cover email or a cover letter. Even if like they don't have, like, a lot of funders now have their own online portal, whether it's like Go Grants or Smart Simple or something like that. Like if you go to a funder's website, I usually start and they will recommend to you to start your questions and your responses in a Word document. Because when you go onto their portal, you have to do it all in one sitting. And I just did that with, I'll show you. I just did that with Cal Humanities. I just submitted a grant last week, and literally, like, it was not a lot, but I write it in a Word document or a Google Doc first, because you have to count how many words too. Like, you cannot exceed character counts or word counts, and then you copy and paste it, and then you put it into their Go Grants or Smart Simple, online portal. Sometimes it's literally like, if it's a small family foundation, they're like, they don't have something that sophisticated. They're like, email grants@xyzfoundation.org. Submit a cover letter and your responses to these questions and make it less than 2 pages. And it might be like that. So you want it, it's like, just like you're submitting a job application. What would you write in the subject line? Do you have a cover letter? Is it pretty? Is it, whatever? And then your 2-page responses to the question. So you have to, everyone's different. So you've got to look at what they're asking for and make sure that you're matching, you're following their guidelines. So here's, basic things. If you're, again, mission, vision, values, organizational history, your artist statement. I'll show you my artist statement, which has why do I exist and my relevance. This is more for an organization, or you as an artist. We just talked about that. Describe your project. What are the outcomes you hope to achieve? What is why, your why, and how will you measure success? I always say this, what's the problem? Well, so what? You have to just ask yourself every time you're writing something, I took recycled fabric and I made this sculpture. Yeah, so what? Why should I give you money? Because I've read so many proposals. We served 100 people. Yeah, so what? Did you change or save their lives? Did you like make an impact with your art? Did it like get kids to, you think about like Sesame Street, or like cartoon like Sesame Street. Like, so what? We put Muppets on stage. Yeah, so what? 100 kids watched our program. Yeah, so what? It got kids to like increased academic success, or it was an opportunity for parents and families to sit together, for 30 minutes a day and learn together, or something like that. There was a problem like too many kids are spending too much time in front of the screens, or a lot of people are depressed right now because of COVID, or yearning to go outside and see beautiful art or something like that. What problem are you trying to solve, and how does your art address the problem? And if you have a target population like the K through second grade, I actually am getting commissioned to do work for K through second grade, reading literacy, teaching literacy through movement. So I would use that target population. I would look at the US Census data and look at that specific demographic of kids that I'm working with. In Southeast San Diego, the median household income is like poverty, $50,000 for a income or a household of 4, blah, 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 blah. K through second grade are reading below grade level. So I have proof that I'm not just making this stuff up. Like, yeah, I think this is a poor neighborhood because I said so. It's like, no, the US Census data says that. Or according to the San Diego Unified School District, this area is blah, blah, blah. So it gives me some credibility. Like, there is a problem, and my art is going to save and change lives, and it's going to impact this community. It's going to increase neighborhood pride. It's going to lower crime rates. It's going to do something. It's going to do something. So that's sort of tied to the needs statement and the problem statement of why your art matters. So I'm just going to jump over here into a sample of my, what did I do? I did a sample. I wrote a legacy grant to California Arts Council. Sadly, I didn't get funded, but I still think it's a good proposal. It was super competitive, super competitive. They only funded like 10 people and $50,000, but there were like famous people in there. I was like, oh my God, Alonzo King and like all these other like choreographers that I look up to. They didn't get funded either, so I didn't feel so bad. And some of them I scored higher than, then I was like, oh my God, I'm not that bad. But anyways, here are some of the questions that I wanted to share with you. And this is how I started in a Word document. I know it's sometimes cumbersome, but you have to go to the application, copy and paste the questions. Sometimes the funder's nice and they give you a Word document that has all the questions in it, and they tell you how many words or characters that you have. And sometimes, most of the time, I would say almost 99% of the time, they don't do that. They don't have time for that. So you have to go in their portal or wherever the application guidelines are, and you copy and paste their question, your limitations, and then you write your answers. So like the first question, provide one sentence indicating your public pen stage name, your artistic mediums or practices, and the community with whom you work. This statement may be edited, blah, blah, blah. It's just kind of like your tagline. And then I just write, Anjanette Maraya Ramey, I include my pronouns, is a choreographer, activist, and creative entrepreneur. She's a first generation Filipino American, founder of Maraya Performing Arts, socially engaged performing arts collective, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, I only have 50 words. And did I hit 50 words? 51 words. I probably, when I went into the portal, took something out, took a word out. It's so hard, trust me, especially when I have such a long name, that to get this under 50 words is like a mind puzzle. So when you go in and you start writing, I always just spit everything out. I just vomit out all the words. And then when I realize I'm at 51 words, I go, okay, what words can I take out? Anjanette is a first generation Filipino. I can take that and out. Founder Maraya, or I can take out a word, but I have to go, is a social, I can take out new. That word doesn't matter. Like if there's words you think that don't matter, take them out. See, now I'm exactly at 50 words. That to me is the hardest part, is like getting it down to what they say they want. Here's another one. This is like my artist narrative, I guess, or artist statement. And this is when I taught the funding strategies for artists class, I had my students write this and rewrite it and share with the class. And the class gave feedback and rewrote it numerous times. I think if you don't have an artist statement yet, this can be a good question as a launching point to get those words on paper. So this question says, describe how you came to be an artist. So this is like your why. We don't just decide overnight, I want to be an artist just because. You know, there is something that propelled you to become an artist, right? That is the narrative part we as funders, or, you know, most people want to hear. Remember, these are people. People give money to people. So they want to hear about you, and why you became to be an artist, not what you do. It doesn't say, describe what you do. Because then you'll be like, I'm a painter. And you're like, uh-huh. I'm a sculptor. Yeah, okay. I'm not feeling it, right? You want them to feel you, hear you, see you, get entrenched in why you do what you do. So describe how you became to be an artist. Your traditions could be your cultural traditions, your artistic practices, your challenges, accomplishments, and long-term aspirations for your work. That's like a lot to say in 700 words. I only use 600. You don't have to use all the words. Don't think, oh, I have to, you know, I have to use all 700. That doesn't mean you get higher points. Don't do that. Because sometimes if you go on for too long, it's like, oh my God, got it. I got it. You know, so I talk about my heritage and my upbringing and how it's informed my career path, being a first generation Filipino American raised in a military family, and how acculturation into a foreign country has really inspired me to create high quality artistic experiences for historically marginalized communities, because I grew up in a part of San Diego where I didn't always feel like I had a place to belong. So, you know, I sang in church, I did karaoke, I did our cultural dances, and my parents barely afforded for me and my sisters to take piano lessons. But for the most part, I had to seek artistic experiences that weren't like, I go to a conservatory or a studio and I learn. So my involvement through the arts was based on my cultural heritage and my upbringing. And this custom or tradition of bayanihan, which is the Filipino custom or tradition that means in the spirit of communal unity and cooperation to achieve a common goal. So I talk a little bit about bayanihan and how it informs my work, you know, and how I really center equity and inclusion in my art making, my teaching artist practice. And then I talk about what I do. La 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 la. Okay. So I'm telling a story. So we have to be storytellers in our words. And a lot of times I think CalArtians, I know you CalArtians, you get very, sometimes get very esoteric and very high level in your words. You have to talk like you're just talking to your aunt. Like an 8th grader, you know, because we again don't know who's reading on the other side. And so it has to be very almost colloquial, not colloquial, but in between colloquial and conversational. So it needs to be in conversational language, not in this, social, political, artistic practice wording that we like to write in. Not everyone is that sophisticated. And they get a little like, what did you just say? Can you just tell me in like plain language? So that I can send this to you all as well as a sample um, of an individual artist grant that a public funder put out. So in this grant, you'll see a lot of the basic components. I didn't have to do a cover letter because this was in their online portal. Remember, again, I started in a Word document and then I made sure my word count matched. See, I just basically copied and pasted. This is their whole entire application. And then here's my work samples, which I think are also super critical. This is actually one of my favorite parts. I love this part. Your work samples are going to be, they wanted 10. So you have to look specifically at their exact restrictions. Images, audio should be recent and relevant. So don't give me something from like 2000 and late. That is so old school and not cute. So I'd say within the past 5 or 7 years, because of the pandemic, I'd say 7 years. Any documents, maybe you have like press releases or reviews, or you have a flyer from an art exhibit, or for visual artists, some of your like photography or your paintings or whatever. For sound designers, maybe it's your music or a play where you did sound design. For dancers or theater artists or musicians, like videos. And it should be relevant to your work. So if you're a vocalist and you just give me like some lyrics you wrote and I don't actually hear you vocalize, like I'm going to be like, wow, I wish you could have heard them sing. Right. Or if you're a dancer and I have like just one still photo of you, like in an arabesque, I'm like, oh, that's cute, but I would love to see you dance, or your choreographer. I would love to see your choreography. So I'm an activist. I'm also a choreographer. So I made sure to include, well, it says right here, support materials. I must supply a resume, so I did that, or a CV, and up to 2 documents. And it even tells me right here, generated within the past 2 years. That's the support materials. And then work samples, it says provide brief descriptions of the work samples and other support materials. And it says for video work samples, provide the specific start and end times for the portion you would like the panel to review. Please be sure to indicate which files your notes are referencing. So So they only gave me 200 words to describe, and I only had 3 links. Plus I was able to include a Word document with 10 other links because it was for this specific grant, they let me do that. But I would not recommend, and I've seen this before, please do not do this, because I have served as a panelist on California Arts Council for like the last 10 years, and I've seen it, and I just kind of go skip, where people give me like their 60-page anthology or their whole entire like magazine or zine, and I'm like, oh my God, just pick the relevant pages. Or like if you have like a 60-minute concert, do not give me the whole 60-minute concert. Just give me the part where it's like you're like spotlighted. And you write right there, the whole clip's only 2 minutes. Okay, they can watch 2 minutes. From here, I just want them to watch 3 minutes. Great. And I'm describing what it is. Oh, it's a KUSI news feature from this date and has choreography of my student and only watch from this time to this time. And then I say, oh, there's a site-specific dance at a graffiti art. This was made in this time. So see, I'm not making them guess what the heck it is. And then if it's a Vimeo link, give them the passwords. Tell them which part you want them. And then see how I have work sample. I have an attached PDF that has links of commissioned work, rehearsal, features, news story, blah, 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 blah. See, so I will send this to you. I don't want to explain the whole thing in person, but This will be like a good example for you to reference. And if you want to look at better ones, like the ones who actually won, these are public documents. That's what I love about the government, is that you can be like, oh my God, my friend Macedonia Arteaga, he actually won. And so did another mural artist from Chicano Park in San Diego, Victor Ochoa. They both won. I'm so happy for them. They deserve it. So you can ask the CAC, hey, can I look at Victor Ochoa, or who won? Let me see who won. And then could I take a look at their grants? Because they had legacy artists, they had emerging artists, and then they had established art. They had like different levels. So you can start to look at who won and then ask for a copy of their winning proposals. And perhaps you can use that as a guide. And you can do that with any public funder, because all of this is public. So yeah, that's something to be conscious of too, is that what you write, like the whole world will hear and see in a public grant. So you want to make sure you're representing the best version of yourself. So that's that. That's like a good example of a individual artist grant under a public funder that talks about all the different components of a typical grant proposal. And every grant proposal is going to look different. So this is just one example of that. Let's see. So lots and lots and lots of stuff. Sorry I had to breeze through that, but we have about 12 minutes left for questions. In the slide deck, you will have my contact information, my LinkedIn, my Facebook, my website. You can reach out to me there. I'd love to stay in touch and see what y'all are doing. And if you're applying for grants, that'd be awesome. Hope you can take some of these tools, tips, and tricks and apply them in your learning or in your grant proposals. I will now, let me look at the Q&A. See, there's a question in here. Oh, open question. Okay, if trying to show past work or projects and how you've interacted with the community, can you send grant readers to Facebook, IG, or YouTube to what you posted in the past? No, I would send them to that if they allow that. So you'd have to look at, remember in like California Arts Council. So just think about these readers. There is such a thing as panel fatigue. There are times when I've literally read 100 proposals, and the average is like between 40 and 75 that a panelist is reading. So imagine you're reading like, oh my God, look how many pages mine is, you're reading like 75 of those. There comes a point where you're just scanning. So if I'm just going to scan through your IG, I'm like, ooh, yeah, if you can do both. And if you can attach whatever it is, your past project, like a picture of you with community or a short video that can be embedded into the actual proposal, or a Vimeo link that they can click right away, that doesn't give the panelists too much extra work to do. If you're like, go to my IG and then link in bio and then click this link that says, that's already like 30 seconds of time that I'm like, oh, I'm frustrated. It's not unprofessional. It's just, you don't know who the panelists are and their sophistication of social media or technology. Some people still print. Oh my God, still print their, I'm not kidding, all their proposal pages. And they come to the panel with like paper. And I'm like, oh my God. I mean, we still also have our laptops open, and then they'll click and then for California Arts Council, I know we dedicate at least 2 to 5 minutes to just review work samples. And then they assign a lead reader and a co-lead reader. So if I'm the lead reader for, I don't know, XYZ dance organization, I would start it off by saying, okay, can we look at work sample number 2? Let's start at 28 seconds and watch till 3 minutes and 28 seconds. And then we watch it. But see how it was easy for me to just grab work sample number 2 instead of going, okay, let's all go to their Facebook and then scroll down. Wait, well, scroll down. No, not that one, not that one. Oh wait, this one gets a little like cumbersome. So whatever you can do to make it easier on the panelists, the better. I hope that answers your question, Anna. All right. So Dustin, I've been working on a project that's now spanning over 15 years. Wow, good for you. I don't have much to show for the past few years as I've been working on this film. Of course, takes a long time. Most of the film is unprocessed in my freezer. I can afford to develop it. Is working on a grant not the best avenue because I've been applying to grants but don't have a portfolio of my work in the past 5 years, but I do for higher work, though it's not relevant. So I feel I'm trying to point to what I can do. Curious to what the best approach is moving forward. So for Dustin and all of you, I always recommend diversifying first you have to know how much that project is going to cost. You have to give yourself a deadline. I've had students in the past, they're like, nah, I'm making this thing. Like, like when filmmakers are like, wait for it, when they do the trailer, like coming next fall, you kind of like give yourself that deadline. Oh shoot, I announced it. Like this Moana thing, like I'm scared as heck, like scared to death. That's a $70,000 project. That's a big project for me. And when I say we're doing it next fall, I've already said it. Like I've said my goal and it's out there in the world. Like there is no turning back. I have to do it. So I have to already be starting a year in advance, diversifying, applying for grants and asking my board members to do an event and asking individual donors and thinking of how I'm going to sell tickets and market it and do PR and all that. So it's a lot of and not just, should I just be applying for grants? No, you should not just be applying for grants. You have to be doing other things to fund your project. Unless you have like, Oprah in your back pocket. And there could be like, I just got, I don't know, out of the blue, a 6-figure contract this summer where we had to write a whole new dance theater musical in 3 weeks. And it was a foundation because they got, and this is why I pay attention to public funding, because I did not think that the Biden CARES Act money would funnel to a local foundation, funneled to the San Diego Parks Foundation, got CARES Act money to help children get outside and do enrichment activities. That's what the CARES Act money was like. Get children outside and have them doing enrichment, get their families to like recreate and play and enjoy arts and culture. And so Biden money came to the city of San Diego. City of San Diego gave it to the Parks Foundation. Parks Foundation called me and was like, make something in 3 weeks. And I was like, oh crap. So they paid for everything. Because I said, if I'm going to make for something in 3 weeks and I'm going to hire artists and tech and do all this stuff and a production team, you need to pay for it. The whole thing. I don't have time to subsidize. This is the cost. And they paid for the whole thing. So if you have something like that, then yes. But if now we're a year later and like they actually told me next year, they told me already, we're not paying for it next year. Great, then I'm not doing it. I can't do it. I can't do it unless you pay for the whole thing. And those are the decisions I've had to make and say, well, if it's not partially or I don't think I can fundraise for it because I want to do it next summer, which is already like less than a year away, I can't do it. I'm just not going to do it. So those are the things, setting a deadline and diversifying your revenue streams so that it holds you accountable. And I know as artists, it's hard. It's very, very hard because you want that time to create, but you also have to put yourself under that pressure to create within budget and within a specific time frame. Yeah, Dustin, does that help? Hopefully. I know it's not the answer you want to hear, but we all kind of, Yeah, kind of have to go through it. That is the hard part about being an artist, is finding ways to fund our art. And a lot of times we also need to be marketing ourselves. So marketing and PR is a part of funding yourself, because I've noticed the more marketing and funding I've done of my work, more people have been calling me. Oh, I saw you on the news. Oh, I saw your work over here. Oh, I saw, I saw your TEDx thing or whatever, or you were at the New Children's Museum and your kids, even if it's not my work, it's just my family's and my kids doing something at the New Children's Museum. Somebody found me that way, or we saw this, we'd like to commission for this. It's like the more I got myself out there, the more people have been calling me. So you can't hide under, like, I'll just write a grant and get funded. Like, no, a lot of my work has been a mixed bag of just a lot of things. And I'm constantly feeding my marketing, my website, my social media. And the minute I slowed down from that, I noticed I get less calls and emails. So it's kind of like I make this promise to myself every day, is that my marketing, my PR, my relationship building is my oxygen. It's my breath to make my art. And if you can't breathe, then you're gonna die, right? So you have to keep breathing life into how you're going to sustain your art. And it's marketing, PR, funding, relationship building, networking. And for you introverted artists, maybe you have somebody an agent or a manager who can do that for you, but you have to learn how to do that for yourself. Oh, Dina, thank you so much. I love that board members are here too. Board members have a huge fiscal responsibility in terms of helping the organization carry its mission, making sure they have their resources. And so understanding all the things that go into the grant writing process from a board member's point of view is super helpful, because I've had so many board members when I was an executive director, like, can't you just write a grant for that? Like, it'll just come like rain overnight, right? Can't you just make it grant rain? I'm like, hold on, time out, just a minute. It's not that easy. So thank you, Dina, for your service. Being a board member is such a critical part of our ecosystem. So thank you. All right, there's the survey link. I will be sending all that stuff to Carolyn. Any last thoughts, Carolyn?
So Anjanette, thank you so much for coming back and sharing your expertise with everyone. This is such an important topic to share with community members, and just really appreciate your willingness to come back and do this talk for us again. We did, in anticipation of Anjanette's talk, earlier this month, we did a talk on fiscal sponsorship. So it's a deeper dive into the ins and outs of fiscal sponsorship. It was done by another alum who runs Fulcrum Arts, which is a different organization. And that alum went into detail about what to look for, what type of services, some of the tax implications and things like that. So I would definitely pair this talk with that talk for a complete spectrum. But once again, thank you all for joining us, and thank you, Anjanette. And I hope everybody has, you're welcome, a great rest of your day.
Bye, thank you.